Well, hello everybody, and welcome to part 6 of Ari Aster week of Spooktober shorts on We Watch Shudder. My name is JD. Who's here with me?
It's Michelle, and I'm mentally deranged now after a whole week of Ari Aster.
That's Michelle found this was it a tweet? An X post? Is that what it was?
The
you
Google
tell them about it. You found it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just Googling something about Ari Aster's movies, and the first result was, is Ari Aster okay?
And I gotta tell you,
he did answer, and he said that he's no better or worse than he usually is, so probably no, he's not okay.
No better or worse than he usually is. Well, that's delightful vagary. Anyway, guys, you know what we're doing by now here for Spooktober. We're dropping a new episode every day. We're looking at horror short films outside the Shudder library. We've been doing Ari Aster films this week. And today, we have a little bit of an extra special situation going on because we are going to talk about the Ari Aster short Beau, which I believe is about 6 or 7 minutes long. And then we're also going to spend some time discussing the feature film that evolved from the short film Beau, the 3-hour feature film, which is called Beau is Afraid. We're going to dig into that as well, just as an extra bonus here on today's episode. Michelle, why don't you lead off talking about the short here? You were into these shorts way sooner than I was, and you've spent a lot more time with them.
Yes. What would you like me to talk about? Like what happened?
I don't know.
Though?
Well,
just
guys,
generally?
So we're gonna. There's no spoiler-free moment here, right? We're gonna dive right in on our discussion of this short. So I don't know. How have we been doing these, Michelle? All of a sudden, I don't even remember how we've recorded 13 of these already.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I can't remember how they work.
We have done it in so many different ways. So this one, I'm just going to tell you what happens in Beau the short as a quick summary for people who haven't seen it. It's called Beau, but it is like Beau is Afraid in that Beau is afraid in the short. And he's a man who leaves his keys in the door as he is on his way out of his apartment. And he forgets something in his apartment, runs in to get, comes back, and somebody has taken the keys. So now he is convinced that somebody is going to break in.
And his bag, wasn't it? Was it the keys
and his bag?
Yeah.
Yep. And he sees a man outside, and he tries talking to him, and the man's like, fuck off, or whatever he said to him. And so then Beau calls his mom, and he's like, I'm not going to be able to make it. And then dude breaks in after all, and it's a whole weird paranoid thing. The end.
Yeah, that's more or less it. This movie actually... especially after now having seen Beau is Afraid, this movie is very similar in a way to one we watched last week, Oculus Chapter 3, The Man with the Plan, in the sense that this 6 or 7... How long is the short, Michelle, exactly?
It is 6 or 7 minutes. It is exactly 6:23. Hey,
6:23. Hey, awesome. So it's I was right on the money. Anyway, this short film more or less happens note for note as a scene in the feature film. But the short itself is very effective for creating a sense of anxiety and stress in a short period of time. The lead performance of Beau is done by, and I'm ashamed I don't remember the actor's name, but the same actor who, I'm sorry?
Billy Mayo.
Billy Mayo, who also played the father in another Ari Aster short we talked about earlier this week, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. Solid performance here. Another also just... especially in retrospect now, having seen his features before these, just very clear indicators of the level of skill and craft this guy was preparing to bring to the table. And other than that, and also in the sense of what I really want to do today is talk about this feature film, I don't really have a lot more to say about Beau. I'm gonna give this one as a short. I'm gonna give this one 4 skulls. It was really solid. But I wanna get into the meat of this, Michelle. How about you?
I am totally fine with that. Let's just go for a 4 for me too, because I don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to talk about Beau is Afraid.
All right, guys. So, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name's JD. Who's here with me?
It's Michelle, and I'm paranoid now.
I'm not gonna edit this or do anything.
I know. I'm saying that I am paranoid because I am like Beau, and that is this
okay.
reality?
That's fair.
What is going on? Who knows?
Right. So,
I don't.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with We Watch Shudder, it's right there in the title. We watch Shudder. Sometimes though we don't watch Shudder. Sometimes we watch other horror features. And that's what's happening on this episode. If I don't do this like I'm starting a brand new episode, I'm going to fuck it up and forget something. I mean, I'm probably going to fuck it up and forget something either way, but that's
it's
my
paranoid,
neurosis, boys.
So it's working. Yeah. It's great. It's great.
What are we talking about today,
them?
Michelle? What are we talking about? Oh, who's here with me? I did that part. See, I've completely fucked this up already. What are we talking about, Michelle?
Beau is Afraid, and I'm just going to tell him the plot because I want to talk about it. I have so much to say.
Right.
I've been waiting
Guys,
so long
we're skipping
for
a
you to watch this
spoiler-free
goddamn
section
movie.
here. If you need to see the goddamn movie, go see it. I waited so long to finally see it, and Michelle's mad at me, but we got shit to talk about. Here's your spoiler warning. Get if you don't want them. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. Beau, he's afraid. He is played by Joaquin Phoenix, and he has mommy issues. And he is going to go and see his mother, and he gets a phone. Well, he's told he has to take his pills with water, but he doesn't have water, so he runs outside to try to get water. But then he comes back, and there were a bunch of people in his apartment, and that's a whole thing. And then he finds out that his mother is killed, and his mother is Patti LuPone, and she had a chandelier dropped on her head. So now he needs to go to see his mom for the funeral, but he can't because he's naked and hit by a truck, and now he's getting nursed back to life by Nathan Lane and that lady from The Office whose actor name I have forgotten. And they have a dead son, and now they also have a guy named Jeeves, and he was in the army with their son, and he's a little off. And then they have a daughter, and she's a little bit off. And then she gets Beau high, and then she drinks a lot of paint, and then she dies, and everybody's like, get out and go kill him, Jeeves. And then Beau runs into the woods, and now there's a play. That's his life, but it's not his life. And then it is his life, but then it's not his life. It goes on for a very, very long time. And it you forget what movie you were originally watching by the time that is done. And then Jeeves shows up, and he's like, I'm going to kill everybody. And Beau's like, oh, no. And so he runs away, and then he gets zapped by an ankle monitor, and then he comes to, and eventually he makes it to his mother's funeral, where he then meets his childhood crush, and then he bangs his childhood crush in the bedroom of his mother, but then she dies, and then his mom is no longer dead, and he knew that she was no longer dead, and then he sees his father, and his father is a penis, and then he gets in a boat, and then he putters his way into an arena where he will be judged for his crimes, and his lawyer dies, so he does not have any legal counsel, and then Beau dies because he did not have any legal counsel. And then the credits roll as people leave the arena.
All right, Michelle.
Yeah.
We're going to start at the end and work backwards because you said something there that I am immediately not necessarily in agreement with. You said Beau dies.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure.
Well, you're wrong.
No. let me look. So at the very end,
you tell me why he did not.
Here's why. Okay, so this movie opens with a frankly incredible. I really liked this part of it. Scene of basically it's Beau being born, right? It's like first person perspective in utero. And he's coming more and more conscious and aware, and then he's born, and then at the end, the boat obviously gets all weird, and he gets sucked down into the water. But as that's happening, and there's splashing and chaos in the water, in the background, there are sounds mirroring things that were being said in the delivery room at the beginning of the movie when he was born. And I think the implication of that is that Beau didn't die. His punishment is he has to go back and do it all fucking again.
Oh, yes, I believe that there is a possibility that it is circular and it will just keep happening over and over again. But he did die. He's just going to be reborn again.
Okay, fair. Yeah, maybe this is just a semantic issue, but
No, that's fair. I'm not positive if it is circular, but it is.
I'm not certain.
Considered.
I definitely don't want to say. I just
Yeah.
Look, Ari Aster doesn't do anything for no reason, and that's especially clear in this film. And so I have to believe there's some kind of implication there. But no, I see what you're saying here. Yeah, if we're calling this a reincarnation cycle, then yes, technically he has to die to be reincarnated.
That's how reincarnation works.
Yeah, exactly. You're very correct, Michelle. So this fucking movie, I obviously we've talked about it before. I am a huge fan of Aster's first two features, Hereditary and Midsommar. Incredible fan of both of those movies. This is the first movie he's made where I don't even dislike it, but I come back to another point that we've made several times recently, where this feels like two different movies sort of blended together. Okay, fair. But so there's a lot about this movie that I was really drawn in by, and I was riveted, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I wanted to know more. And then there were entire sequences of this movie where I don't want to say I was disconnected or pushed away, but look, this is basically how I can describe it. I really enjoyed everything from the beginning of this movie up until Beau gets hit by the car. And then everything from after he gets hit by the car until he gets to his mom's house. The vast majority of that, the stuff with the Nathan Lane family and the stuff with the strange people in the woods, and the play that I can't even say I dislike that, but it feels like suddenly I was in at least one other completely different movie. And I know that Ari Aster has described this movie several times as a nightmare comedy. And I think the best way to describe my experience with a lot of this stuff is that there are certain parts of this where this feels like that situation where somebody is telling a story about their childhood that they think is hilarious, and people are just kind of staring at them wide-eyed with no, dude, that's not funny, that's fucked up. And then it just gets almost like David Lynch weird for its own weirdness at some points. And I definitely understand the way all of the story ties together. I see the threads that they were putting out into these other scenes, but I don't want to go back to day one JD. This movie is... I would have enjoyed this movie a lot better if the second hour was just completely removed. And I would have also... I wish that everything after he leaves his mother's house, that whole scene in the arena at the end and all of that, when this movie at times just goes so absurd and so weird, and is more about the story of Beau finding himself, I think, in a lot of ways. Whereas the parts of this that were the most interesting to me were the parts that were more or less specifically focused on his conflict with his mother. Does that make sense?
Yes. For me, the only part that they could have removed is the play. Everything else I am baffled by and so in love with.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, the parts of this that I was really drawn in by, look, I mean, it's Patti LuPone, right?
Oh, I know.
And I was
Here for the ladies who drink. Yeah.
I was real concerned that she was just going to be a voice on a telephone for this whole movie. But holy shit, when she turns up, like, I think part of what makes me what makes this movie awkward for me is that clash of tones, because when this movie does get serious, it's fucking heavy, intense shit. Like, it's really fucking it's very reminiscent of what we've seen from Ari Aster and loved from Ari Aster so many times before. But the shift from those moments into these, and I don't want to say they're happy or light by any means, but these much more absurdist kind of story elements. And a lot of it to me seemed to just be reinforcing bits that I was kind of already aware of. And so it all just felt like a little much. And that middle hour is the part of it that was the least captivating to me. We can't not, of course, talk about the giant dick creature.
Oh yeah, I have a long list of things to talk about.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
You just got to react to this for the first time. I have had months and months and months to research and go down the rabbit hole. So I'm curious about your thoughts as like a first-time viewer. I have seen the whole thing in totality twice, many parts of it many times.
I mean, I guess that really is the summary of it. Is for that first chunk, I was really drawn in, and then it happens right when. The car hits him and he wakes up in Nathan Lane's house. Everything from there until he finally gets to his mother's home, with the exception of a few little bits, and like obviously something has to happen between A and B, but I feel like that entire thing could have been condensed into maybe like 10 minutes of stuff that bring and just keeps focused on that thread of Beau and the interaction with his mother. Some of the more specific things that I noticed that aren't even so much really like, this is a fucking beautiful movie. It is so visually dense. It reminded me in a lot of ways of Munchausen. With the characters in the background just kind of existing, but in such a way that they're not even necessarily an aggressive or open menace, but they're not menacing either, right? And they're just awkward enough to be like, what the fuck is going on there? That first sequence where he runs away from the tattooed guy, and then he gets into his building and he's just walking down that corridor. I paused that several times just to look at all the different things that were scrawled on these walls. There is nothing that happens in a single frame of this movie that doesn't happen completely intentionally. Like, every bit of every frame of this movie is so meticulously, carefully constructed, and it's kind of nuts. I was really impressed by that. Obviously, there's a visual motif here of doorways, and people being seen through doorways, or people passing through doorways. I'm sure there's some interesting thoughts and ideas about that that I just haven't had a chance to dig into any further. But yeah, because the movie, when it is heavy, it's like, oh my, like, there were things that I thought were going to happen here. I believe, because they talk about how his mom tells him in a very, very inappropriately detailed story that his dad died the moment he inseminated his mom. And look, I gotta tell you, the first in that scene where he gets into the bathtub near the beginning of the movie, it didn't even occur to me, except I saw a flash and I was like, Jesus, Joaquin Phoenix has huge nuts. And then when you think about that in that quick flash in that scene to what ultimately happens at the end of this movie with the gigantic penis monster with the clearly distended testicles and how that becomes a running theme through this whole movie, like, there's so much to unpack here, Michelle. I'm definitely, regardless of what I thought of that second hour, I'm gonna have to see this again. But this movie is just a giant pile of what the fuck. It's like, I still want to know, like, how did what's her name, Eloise? How did she die? Are they implying that, like, his balls were so clogged up and pressured that when he finally came, it, like, injured her? It was so intense and she died? Is that what they were trying to say? That's also fucked up. I don't know. There are so many levels of crazy to this. But I just don't think it needed to be a 3-hour movie. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'll figure more out about it or have different opinions if I watch it again. But God damn, that was a trip, Michelle. I think I've said enough for right now. You've got plenty of things to say. Please go ahead.
Okay. When I first saw this movie, I didn't know how to feel about it. But a thing about me is that I like a movie that keeps me engaged well after the movie is over. If a movie is bad but keeps me thinking, then I wind up falling in love with it. If I go down that rabbit hole of, like, what did it mean? What was this? And it's not a case of what did it mean because the director didn't know what they were doing or the writer didn't know what they were doing. If there was some sort of meaning to unpack. Ari Aster has not come out and stated what the metaphor is, what any of this means, and that has kept me so engaged since the first time I saw it, of trying to piece so many things together. And every time I watch it, there is something. Oh, no. Yes, JD.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask you, like, don't you think it's pretty clear that this movie is about a shitty relationship with your mother? Like, I sent you that message. I was like, this dude
I've got a lot to say about that.
Okay.
Yep, it's on my list.
Okay, cool.
Put your microphone down.
Okay.
So, oh shit. Now I'm, where was I? Oh, but yes. So, the actual meaning of, like, what part was real? What part was fake? What was this? Every time I watched it or watched certain parts, there are so many things I pick up on. One of the best ones is that, it's just like the fact that little things change that make you question what is happening. And when Beau tries to call his mother and he gets the delivery guy who confirms that his mother has died, that person is one voice. And then later on, he sees a clip on the news, and that's Bill Hader now as the delivery driver. Bill Hader was not on the phone. Why did they change that person? There are so many implications in this movie that Beau's entire life has been fabricated by his mother as an overbearing person. When he is going through her house, he finds pictures of all the people that we have encountered in this movie so far. He has pictures of the family who, the Nathan Lane family, they're in his house. The tattooed man who chased him down the street is in a picture in his mother's house. Are these people all employees? Eloise is obviously an employee of his mom. She works for some sort of big pharmaceutical company that has now, oh God, what was the phrase? It was something like perfectly normal or something like that. So it's like, did she manufacture Beau's life? Because now they have, like, apartment complexes and the logo of his mother's company is on the apartment complex that Beau lives in. Like, has she manufactured this whole thing to show that she can create a perfect life for her son? That's one of the questions that I have. Water plays a gigantic role in this movie. It starts with him being born, which you could say is basically like being submerged in water. It ends with him drowning in water. He meets the love of his life on a cruise ship. There's constant water sounds throughout. He has a very traumatic memory of a bathtub, like the view from the bathtub. Water is a gigantic thing in this, and water can mean so many different things as symbolism in movies. It can be rebirth, it can be death, it can be healing. Yes. He lives in Watertown.
No, it's Wasserton, which is a play on their family last name.
Yep, exactly. And Wasser is German for water.
Oh, okay. So that I clearly didn't know. I understand what you're saying there. No, what I guess I feel like this is one of the biggest things about this that really struck me is I actually just recently on Facebook had an exchange with somebody about an idea that I've kind of had for a while. The idea that no matter what else happens, how well your experience being nurtured from birth through infancy into a sapient, conscious, aware person, we all experience this absolutely insane birth moment where all of a sudden we just went from warm and comfortable and just dark and soft and quiet, and all of a sudden we're just ripped into loud and bright and chaotic, and that's in itself has to be a traumatizing experience especially on like your reptile brain, right? Like you're more or less born with fight or flight going crazy. And I feel like that water motif, that is one of the things that I was really connected to in the movie, because I feel like the reason this movie opens the way it does, and the reason I think the water motif is to keep referencing back to the experience of birth and how that initial trauma, in a lot of ways, I think is intended to frame Beau's entire experience. I think was, and I think that the water motif just kind of references back to that.
We're going to talk about the mother stuff.
Okay.
We're going to get into it because...
Let's do it.
Okay, so...
How's your relationship with your mother, Michelle?
I haven't talked to her in a very long time.
Oh, I got to tell you, like, I mean, obviously we don't go into too many details, but I know we've mentioned it before. A big part of my experience watching this was also just like, oh, Michelle is gonna have some thoughts because
but my mother is very different from this mother in that his mother seems to care too much.
Yeah.
I did not have that problem at all. Okay, so you had messaged me while you were watching the movie. It gave me a couple of reactions, and a lot of them were, oh, fuck, what? And but one of the messages you sent was, what is Ari Aster's relationship with his mom like? And I have answers for you because I have had time to really delve in.
Because between this and Hereditary and then Munchausen, like, this fella seems like him and his mother might not talk to each other a whole lot.
Which is incorrect, sir. Ari has stated he has a great relationship with his parents, and I think he has one brother. And until he says otherwise, I'm going to believe that. He has stated that there are problems within his family that he will not discuss that did not affect him but affected people he loves. Knowing that, I had gone down a rabbit hole. I didn't mean to, because I didn't want to dig into Ari Aster's personal life. I feel like that kind of crosses a line. But I did stumble across the fact that his mother is a poet. Her name I just had written down. It is Bobby Lurie. She has multiple published works, and I had just randomly seen something on Reddit, and I have read so much of her work now. It is beautiful. It is distraught. It appears that her mother had Alzheimer's or some sort of mental illness or something along those lines based on the poetry. And it is just as dark as Ari Aster's work is. And I'm not saying that is who he's referencing in these types of works, like his mother has that sort of relationship with who would have been his grandmother, but rather that he grew up in a family where it is okay to make art about dark subjects. And his mother's work, she has something called the Grief Suite that I just could not get enough of, and I plan on actually buying multiple books from her.
Did you say it's called
4.
the Grief Suites?
Yep, the Grief Suite.
Oh, surprise.
Suite.
Yeah, surprise. Grief is a huge running theme in so much of his work.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to give you like a little excerpt
Please
of
do.
her writing, because I am in love with the work that she has put out, and I think it just gave me a better insight to, if Ari Aster says he has a great relationship with his parents, I believe him because I've seen what art his mother makes, and it is beautiful. So this is just a little bit from Grief Suite. The mother's purple blouse and pants are wadded in a ball beneath the gurney. The mother squirms, kicks her legs as she always has. The daughter says no heroic measures. She remembers how the mother says dying is like sleep. The daughter cries and phones the younger son, tells him to tell the older son too. The male nurse says, your mother will not die. She is fine. The mother's white skin, white hair like silk, her luminous body sick and shaking, arms tied down in restraints. Her heart beats green on the black screen above her head, blood pressure in red, oxygen in blue. They say she is doing well.
It's heavy.
Yeah. God, I had so many things of them like just written down, but that I think just really gets into it. She has one, I forgot the name of it now, and I'm going to feel terrible about it, but it was something like, today my mother thought I was in a cup. And it's about how she's at a coffee shop with her mother.
Okay.
And her mother asks her, where are you? Are you in my cup? And she says, no, I'm not. And then she leads her out of the coffee shop like she always does. And it's just these pieces of work about like how she either had Alzheimer's or something that made her forget a lot. And oh God, it haunts me, and it's beautiful. So I did need to talk about Ari Aster's mom for a little bit, because I am glad that people said like, how was his relationship with his mom? And instead I found her artwork, and it is beautiful, and I'm in love with it.
That's awesome. What other things did you make notes on regarding this film, Michelle? What other points do you want to discuss?
Yes. Ari Aster thinks it's hilarious. He thinks that his work is hilarious. He actually said in Midsommar that he had read reviews about people saying, oh, the sex scene was awkwardly funny. And he's like, that was supposed to be hilarious. Like, he started this as a very funny movie and to be a very dark comedy. All of the actors who have worked with him said that he is phenomenal to work with because he really pushes them, except for Richard Kind, who got the script on Friday, filmed on Monday, just read his part without reading the rest of the script and said, fuck it, I'll just watch the movie. And I think that's hilarious. They went, whatever you put out is good with me. I had found, or what I thought was what I had found was Beau is Afraid, the script, and I had downloaded it. Intending to go back and just read through it, and instead of having to watch these scenes, see it like what was the directorial note, director's note in the actual script. Was it different from the movie? Before we start recording, I kind of wanted to be like, can we just pause for an hour and record? But I wasn't going to do that to you, because the script I found is Beau is Afraid with a completely different ending, and gigantic pieces changed, and it seems to be a much earlier version. And I will be scouring this thing for any hints of what was changed after he started working with Joaquin, because he said that Joaquin will not do something that doesn't feel real to him. He says his body physically can't do it. So a lot of things, they work together to make this better. And man, there's a lot of stuff that's different in this. And I really, really, really need to go delve into that now. So yeah, I could talk about this movie for so long. it is something that I just want to like scream about, because the actual movie, it's really beautiful and it's really detail oriented. It's all of the stuff behind it and why things are happening that have kept me so intrigued by it, that it has really made me enjoy it a lot more than just sitting there and watching it for 3 hours straight. I like to watch it and then be like, what did that mean? And go dig into it. And that's why I'm become such a big fan of Ari Aster's work. Because he does this to me. He makes me question so many things in how detailed oriented, and every single thing in all of his movies is deliberate. He doesn't seem to do anything halfway. Everything has a meaning, and I want to go find it. And I love it. I love somebody that detailed.
There was an interesting thing you said somewhere in there that I wanted to bring some attention to. Where you've watched it a couple of times and you're still trying to a certain degree sort out what is real and what isn't, and that brings me I definitely wonder that as well, but also for no other reason than I believe in interviews for Hereditary for sure, but I believe also in Midsommar, because with Hereditary people thought this was maybe some of this was just all happening in her head and it was a metaphor for mental illness, and they were half right. There's definitely a mental illness metaphor, but he said specifically that no, within the context of the film, demons are real. Her mother was part of an evil demon cult, and they have installed this evil demon into their grandchildren. Everything that happens... Yep. In the context of the film is real. I'll go back and put a disclaimer that there are light Hereditary spoilers in here. No, that's more than light Hereditary spoilers. Make a note.
Also, if you haven't seen Hereditary...
Why are you listening to this, frankly? I can't imagine anybody listening who that spoiled it for gives a shit. But
I really want to talk to somebody who has seen none of Ari Aster's work except Beau is Afraid.
Oh, my God.
Then they're just like, what is going on? Who is this course, penis father?
Midsommar brings an interesting spin to that with its themes of these people being drugged and psychedelic experiences. And so there's a certain amount of what is actual, but again, from the perspective, from the perspective of the people who have been drugged, this is what's actually happening, right? And so I come back to that because there's a lot of this that definitely made me say, oh, this is some sort of hallucination or Beau's interpretation of a thing. One of the earliest ones was towards the front of the movie when he keeps getting the notes from his neighbor about the loud music, and he's not playing any music. That sequence happens just shortly after he writes the message on the bottom of the angel for his mother. And I swear to God, and I'm probably just reading way too much into this, but when they slid the notes under, I was like, the handwriting of those notes is the same handwriting that we saw on the bottom of that. And then because then it switches over and all of a sudden he's aware of the throbbing music, and then he goes to bed. And I wonder if some of that was this meta anxiety where we were seeing his nightmare fantasy of what if this isn't even I think maybe what was happening there is he was hearing his neighbor blast music, and he wanted to go write these notes and give them to him, but he was too afraid of what might happen if he went to give him these notes. And I just got this impression that those two bits of handwriting were the same, and the idea was that he had written those notes somehow in an implication that some of this might not actually be really happening. But again, he likes to say that, yes, in the context of the film, this is all exactly what's really happening. And if that's the case here, holy shit.
Yes, because I've seen his other stuff and I know how he did Hereditary, I believed immediately everything was literally happening, or that the way it was being interpreted was absolutely how Beau believed that it was happening. Something that I think it's kind of hinted at but not very heavy, but then in my quick perusal of the early script does seem to play a bigger part, is the pharmaceutical medication he's on. So we already know that he's obviously in therapy and he's messed up, and he tries to take this drug and then he's convinced that he's going to die because he doesn't have water. Again, a thing that he needs, and because he doesn't want to die. And then also he's in a bathtub naked and a man with a spider on his face follows him. So much water. But it plays a much bigger role in the earlier version that I had just had time to kind of glimpse through. So I think that everything literally happens, or that it is his interpretation. I know that we kind of decided to watch the full length Beau is Afraid because you hadn't seen the Beau short earlier, and I had also had my influence of opinion on this movie based on seeing the short and knowing like something is not quite right with how he interprets things, or else it is not quite right with the world he lives in.
Sure.
I mean, the Beau short ends with like the big furry hands impersonating his mother or whatever that scene was. I do not recall exactly how it works out, but it's definitely implied like this is kind of a manufactured situation. Is it manufactured by like a big conspiracy, or is it manufactured by the drugs that were manufactured that he takes to try to fight off his paranoia?
Yeah, that's definitely something. Like, they make it a point on multiple occasions to show you the names of the drugs he's taking. And when I do go back and watch this again, that's something that I'm also going to be spending some particular attention to. Is I'm looking up those drugs, man. I'm seeing what those things are all about. Just because,
one
again,
is a heart condition med. I know that one.
That's the thing, guys. Is the one thing you can say for sure is whether it works for you or not. Everything that happens, like I said, either visually or sonically, nothing that you experience in this movie is just happenstance or by accident. Every frame, every sound, everything just intensely, carefully crafted. And something that I have appreciated about Ari, which ties into that thing about everything in the context of the movies being real, is he seems like a guy who, even if he's not always really open and upfront about telling other people what it is, he, in his head, knows exactly what the story is that he's telling. Yep. Like, I feel like if you were to ask him, he would say, yes, I definitely have a story in mind that I was trying to tell. I may not tell you that specifically because I think it's interesting when people do draw their own elements from it, but he works with such obvious purpose. And again, even though I do very much like this is a minor misstep along the way for me. This is not a perfect film, and I didn't care for it overall as much as Hereditary or Midsommar. I do think, even if there was more understanding for me and connection with that stuff in the middle, I do still think the movie would have been better if it was trimmed down a little bit. I think this is definitely an example of he had two really great movies that got really great notice and really good critical reception, and they just took all the governors off and said, just go. Do whatever you want to do. And how the first time somebody gets a chance to do that, they probably naturally are maybe going to try to do too much. And I don't mean
Star
to say
Wars
that.
Episode 1.
Yeah. And so while I definitely would say, as of right now, on one viewing, it is my least favorite of his three features. I don't dislike it. I certainly don't think it's a bad film, and I at least feel like I understand what he was trying to do with the parts that I didn't like. Any further thoughts from you, Michelle?
Yes, one quick thing. Please
Sure.
don't be mad at me. I like this more than Midsummer.
No, it's fine. We're all entitled to our opinions,
No,
even
I
if
know.
they're wrong. You know, it is what it is.
I know you love Midsummer.
No.
Yes.
One
Yeah.
other thing I have to ask you, because you've got to have thoughts on this, because they never
Ooh, yeah.
really clarify. Does he have a twin brother or not?
I don't know.
Because
he tells his therapist that is a braver version of me, but then he meets the braver version of himself at the same time that he's meeting a penis father.
See, this is what I wanted. This is what brought me to this. I want to ask you about this. He goes up into the attic. He sees the old, emaciated version of himself, and he sees
played by somebody else and credited as Beau's twin.
Okay, which
not
it's
help,
interesting.
but yes.
It's interesting that I'm glad you clarify that, because that's actually gonna answer what I'm saying, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's done that way. Because
I don't think it answers anything for me. It's just an interesting
he
thing.
sees that person who resembles him, but not enough to be a twin. And then he also sees
Fraternal.
the giant penis distended testicle monster.
Yeah.
And then when he comes down out of the attic, his mother, Mona, only ever says, "That was your father," and never tells us which of the two he saw was his father. Was it really
you think
his
the guy
twin?
could have been his dad?
Yeah, was it really his twin?
Ooh.
Or was it his father, and then the giant penis monster is a figment of Beau's imagination or his anxiety and terror? Because
or the man is his father, but there's also a giant penis monster.
and that's also considering
He's an Ari Aster film.
right. It's entirely possible that the implication is no, there was really a giant penis distended testicle monster in the attic, and it was in fact his father.
I mean, who else would Jeeves be doing battle with if not
that's
gigantic penis?
That's a fair question. There are some moments in this movie that I did find genuinely funny. I think ultimately the way I would summarize, he's so fucking good at making his heavy moments so heavy and impactful that I just had a real hard time shifting gears from that to some of the more weirder, more absurdist kind of elements. It really threw me for a loop, and that's why a certain amount of this overall didn't work for me.
I have one final thing I wanted to talk about,
Please
but it
do.
is only tangentially related to Beau is Afraid. Just in case anybody out there in listener land, hello, we have not forgotten about you, but this is just how we get down rabbit holes and talk, and that's why we start recording these conversations. In case anybody else is like me, where they really just want to feel engaged by something that they watch well after it's done, I have 2 shows to recommend that I got obsessed with. So they are actually made by the same creator, which is why I'm talking about both of them. But Dark is a German show that has to do with a lot of, we'll just say science fiction fuckery, because I don't want to say what's going on. That's a huge mystery.
I saw the very first episode on Netflix, and I was very curious about it, but then I don't remember why. I just never got back around to digging into it. I'll have to add that to my list.
Yes, it is incredibly dense. So I watched 3 episodes and went, I don't understand what's happening. So what I wound up doing and what I loved doing was I would watch an episode every day. And then I had found, I think it was on Vulture, there was a writer who was making their own recap that would take like an hour for me to read. It was so in depth and explaining like, here's the science of this. Here's what the colors represent. Here's the throwback to earlier episodes. And I don't think it's bad that the show relied on that in order to be understood. But I enjoyed that I was very confused unless I read like, here's what everything means. I think it was meant to be watched multiple times and pick up on those things. Season 3 is awful, and it's so unfortunate. They forget the rules of their own universe in season 3, but then it ends on a good enough note that it's worth watching just to see the series finale. And then I got so excited because I randomly put on a different show last year called 1899, and I went, oh man, this is gonna pull me in like I was with that Dark show. And I started reading recaps of that, and I would watch an episode a day and then read all sorts of different interpretations of it. And it was canceled and I didn't know that until I had just finished the season finale 8 episodes into it, and I found out it was made by the same people from Dark, and I am never going to stop being mad about it. So you need to know that going into the show, because oh my God, what a cliffhanger on a thing that I was obsessed with. I am also terrified of water. I have talked a little bit on this show about how my dream job would be being a marine biologist because I love marine life. I'm fascinated by what's in the ocean, but that
Curious,
makes me
Michelle.
terrified to go in it.
I would have expected you to be into marine death.
I mean,
Okay,
that's
that
also
was weird.
part of it. Let me tell you about the coral reef,
Oh, jeebus.
which is
But
apparently
let's
coming
not.
back. I subscribe to nature newsletters. It's healing a little bit, so that's good. It probably won't last long.
Sweet.
But there's an episode, I think it's like episode 4 or 5, scared the shit out of me in 1899. And once you watch it, JD, if you do go watch that show, we can talk about it because, oh man, it's one of the scariest things I've ever seen because I am terrified of water. So
Water,
just in case other people are like me, like, oh man, Dark in 1899 really, really scratched that itch.
You know what really gets me about water is, I mean, obviously just drowning in general is kind of a primal fear, I think. And I have a little bit of a personal connection to it because when I was like 4 or 5 years old, my dad was fishing off the shore of this lake and I kind of fell in because I was trying to grab something out of the water. And it was fine. He just ran over and got me, and I didn't drown or nothing, but it was terrifying. No, water is it's a very primal thing, and I understand why it fucks people up. There was a point I was heading to, and I just got distracted by this cheese, and now I don't know what I was gonna say. But
my earliest memory was actually when I fell in a pool and almost drowned. So I don't know if that influenced my gigantic fear of water, potentially, but also I just really like marine life, and every time I read more about it or I watch, there's a TikTok where it's just scientists from a sub, and they are just showing the creatures that they find way down at the bottom of the ocean. Love it. Makes me even more afraid. I've seen the ocean a couple times. I've only stood in it a little bit for a couple minutes. I went, that's fine. I'm good. I don't need to get stung by a jellyfish. I'm fine.
do you follow Kate Bacon on TikTok or Instagram, perhaps?
No, but she sounds delicious.
Kate Bacon is she's involved in STEM professionally in some capacity. I don't know for sure, but she does this reel channel. I think it's on both Instagram and TikTok, where she talks about science things, and she makes like corny jokes that you would probably really like. But it's also like done in like that modern like female voice ASMR style. Like she speaks in a very low volume but like really excited tone. It's weird. But I think you would probably love it.
I will absolutely, I will
Kate
check
Bacon.
it out. If there's anything sciencey,
She opens
I
up her
love
videos
science.
by going up to the camera and she's like, "What's shaking, Bacon?" It's pretty great.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yep, I'm
guys,
definitely gonna be checking her stuff
Beau is
out.
afraid. Ari Aster. We need to give this
I'm
one
afraid.
skull rating, Michelle. We dived right into
Oh,
the spoilers
God.
and never gave it a skull rating. You have to go first.
Okay. As a movie, and not taking into account the hours of research that I did and the fact that it led me to some amazing writing from Ari Aster's mom, I will give it a 4.25.
Okay. So like I said, there are definitely things about this that didn't work for me on the first viewing, or that were odd in some way. I will definitely be giving it another look. But in the context of, for me, both Hereditary and Midsommar would be 5 skull movies. If we could go 6 skulls, I would give them 6 skulls both. But in relation to that, with all the stuff that I really liked about this and all the stuff that didn't quite work for me but I could still appreciate on a really significant level, this is still a 4 skull movie for me. This was a really... Look, I know the guy's been getting metaphorically filleted from all directions for the last several years, but there's a reason for it. He just brings a level of detail and clear obsession and commitment. And again, the one part that I connect to so much is that whether or not you necessarily understand it, he absolutely has a specific story he is trying to tell. So yeah, all things considered, this is still a 4 skull experience for me.
Yeah, I think I like his stuff so much because I have a very, very dark sense of humor, and everything that he finds funny or intends to be funny, I think I find funny as well. I don't think any of it is lost on me, and that is a big piece of it for me, which is funny because Hereditary scared the shit out of me. None of his other work has done that at all. It hasn't even come close. So my very first experience was like, oh my God, this guy's stuff is terrifying. He makes short films. What? And then I wound up in this quirky world of shorts by this man that were like kind of funny, but yet also so hard hitting, like The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. So it does this like perfect balance of the two things for me. And all I can say is something that I said about Mike Flanagan in week 1. And that's, I hope his next movie that I watch is absolutely awful. I hope it's awful. I don't want to enjoy it at all.
Could you please just suck completely one time? Just once?
Yes. I truly hope that, because then it's not, oh, you just like it because it's an Ari Aster film. And I feel like that's what a lot of people feel when you say, I like everything that they've done to at least some extent. But he also doesn't have a large catalog of things.
Well, and
like,
also...
I'm a huge Stephen King fan, but he has some really bad stuff out there.
Also, to be fair, yeah, I like it because Ari Aster made it. He's good at making fucking movies. I'm sorry if that...
Yeah.
if you're perfectly welcome to disagree... But yeah, exactly. I like it because I like how he makes movies. Tell me something I didn't know.
His next movie is rumored, according to an interview that he gave, and maybe he's changed his mind. I haven't seen anything about like what is officially out there. It was just an interview blurb I had seen. It is one of my least favorite genres, and he says it's going to be a Western. However, an Ari Aster Western has the potential to be like Beau is Afraid, but in Texas. So I don't quite know what that means, but I'm really hoping it's garbage because I just would like to dislike something from him. So then I can say, no, I understand where the faults lie. And Beau is Afraid has some of that. Midsommar has some of that for me. You know, like I see the faults. I just wish that I could be like, oh, that was garbage. Can't wait till the next thing. Sure. And then the next thing's like a perfect movie.
One thing I do also love about that trilogy of films, I don't want to call them a trilogy because they're not connected except just by his work.
I bet the fourth one, the Western movie, does loop them all together and all the characters meet up at a shootout. Beau is Afraid is standing there in like assless chaps, just very concerned because he has to battle Toni Collette.
Beau is afraid that he will be decapitated in Sweden.
Yes. Oh my God. And then Florence Pugh is just there being gorgeous. I love Florence Pugh. I'm in love with that woman. Okay. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah. So like, even though they're all his work and they're all unique, they're all their own thing, right? Like Hereditary. Is the creepiest of them, the spookiest and the shiveriest. I feel like Midsommar is the most viscerally shocking. It doesn't create a lot of sense of dread, but what it successfully does is it occasionally just startles the fuck out of you with some shit that just comes out of left field. And so I feel that. And then this is his just weirdest what the fuck movie, right? So like you can definitely tell they all came from the same guy, but they're all their own very unique thing, not unlike Jordan Peele and Get Out, them, and or rather us, and Nope.
I have Jordan Peele's book being delivered to me in just a couple of days.
Nice.
It comes out on October 3rd, and Barnes & Noble is really good about getting it in my mailbox on the day it drops, and I will be reading that in just a single day. I'm going to sit down and do nothing else.
I may have to get that from you when you're done with it.
Yes, you also have to borrow House of Leaves, which I did pull out of my bookcase, and it is sitting in my special bookcase now, so that whenever I remember to give it to you, you can borrow it and be like, what the fuck is this book? So
right on.
You can borrow both.
Guys, that's our thoughts. Obviously, this is the end of week 2 of Spooktober. Week 3 kicks off on Sunday. We're going to be talking all week about fan films from popular horror franchises, mostly popular slasher franchises, with one exception for sure, maybe another if you, depending on how you make those definitions. But
we're definitely going to have to talk about the slasher debate and what.
Oh, for sure,
for slasher.
Yeah.
When we get to that, because I like your definition.
Guys, I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's one of my top 2 horror films of all time. You know, we've talked about this a zillion times. It's not a slasher film. I'm sorry, it's not. It's not.
You can't slash with a chainsaw.
It's not a slasher film, and we'll talk about why at some point. But thank you guys for hanging out with us for another week and for giving us an hour of your day on this episode. I really do think you should see this movie if you haven't done so already, and I think Michelle would agree.
I absolutely agree, and especially if you don't like it, I want to talk to you.
Yes.
I think this is a fun one for my friends who haven't liked it. It's been really fun to discuss of like, but what's the dick monster? I'm like, I don't know. Don't ask me that. I don't have an answer for that. I think it's really fun.
I love how this
people
episode
disagree
is
with
doing
something that I love.
the thing that is both the Midwestern stereotype and also the
Yeah.
end of the Return of the King, where we start the end and then we don't end, and then we start the end and then we don't end. This is ending attempt number 7. Say goodnight, Michelle.
I refuse to end. JD, I have a question. No, okay. Good night, Michelle.
We Watch Shudder is a production of Rat Factory Media, your home for all of today's Rat Factoryist podcasts. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests of We Watch Shudder are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Rat Factory Media. But wait, aren't Rat Factory Media and We Watch Shudder the same people? Shut your cake hole, Charlie. Nobody asked you. We Watch Shudder is available free on all major podcast platforms, and the easiest way to support We Watch Shudder is also free. Just leave a rating and review on your platform of choice. Merge your consciousness with ours on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We're at We Watch Shudder on all those social media platforms. Or find us the old-fashioned way, on the web at WeWatchShudder.com or by email at mail@WeWatchShudder.com. Heck, you can even leave us a voicemail at 701-566-9510. No, seriously, 701-566-9510. Try it if you dare.